The Wannacry ransomware attacks. What happened and what was Wannacry? So, to understand what Wannacry was, you have to understand what ransomware is. For many in the cyber world, ransomware is something that we just try to tend to avoid. But for those who don't understand, ransomware is a type of malware, which is just a malicious program that attempts to extort money from a computer user by infecting and taking control of your computer or the files and documents on your computer. So ransomware tends to lock down specific files or anything that it can, really, sometimes. In the case of WannaCry, and ransoms it out to you. It says, give me some money and we'll give you your files back. Ransomware usually is installed through malicious emails, malicious links, uh, direct messengers, and sometimes just unsecure websites. A lot of social sites and links on social sites tend to come with malicious software that your uh, Windows or your firewall tends to detect, but sometimes it can get past if you allow it. So now that we understand what WannaCry was on a ransomware perspective, what happened? On Friday, May 12th of 2017, a lot of organizations were affected by this ransomware strain that was WannaCry. So, in a general sense, WannaCry was spread over 300,000 plus systems in up to 150 countries. The countries that were directly affected the most, and we'll get into later, were Russia and China and countries in that continent, uh, mostly due to the fact that these countries use a lot of old software, and there were a lot of significant impact other in other places, but um, mostly it was Russia. In other places like the UK, it was national health services that were kind of slowed down due to the lockdown of information. Eventually, there was a kill switch that was found, and it kind of slowed it down after 2 days. But uh, there was a lot of companies that were still drastically affected. So WannaCry was also known as WannaCrypt, WannaCryptor 2.0, and WannaDecryptor. The WannaCry ransomware worm exploited a vulnerability in Microsoft's Server Messenger Block, otherwise known as SMB, which used two protocols that connected files from and folders cross networks. Microsoft patched the flaw back in their update they called MS17-010 on March 14th, but the patch did not cover older systems that weren't being supported, like in Russia and China. The WannaCry ransom attack got started, and Microsoft extended that update to Windows XP, Windows 8, and Windows Server 2003 on Friday, the 12th of May 2017. That attack was launched using those uh, that workaround, and it infected that 300,000 computers in those countries. It demanded payments or ransoms of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in up to 28 languages, which just tried to reach out into every person that it could. So the ransom note itself. So when Decryptor or WannaCry took over your computer, this is what would pop up. Um, Basically, it informs the user of what happened by giving you your important files that are encrypted, how you can recover your files in a very intense way, and how to pay. So obviously we said Bitcoin was the accepted cryptocurrency, and that's because it can't be traced. Upwards of $300 were the ones that were reported, and it continued to go up. And it threatened to delete your files after this date and send up the ransom time and the ransom amount. So directly how many were affected? We said 300,000 computers, but let's get specific here. So the US was affected with FedEx, obviously a strong organization. The UK, we said the hospital systems, 61 specific organizations were disrupted. Russia being the highest, 1,000 plus of its interior ministry infected. That's government computers directly infected and locked down. Spain was Telefonica. That was the largest telecommunications company in Spain, and I believe it still is, as we can see in the right. graph, Russia was drastically the highest reported and highest infected. Legal standpoints, you have to look at it from basically, cyber is a weird world with a lot of rules that are just up and coming. So the UN kind of covered different events. An Article 51 standard, Article 2 is the one that really kind of covers the most. But the issue with that is that the US doesn't really recognize the gap between the use of force under Article 2 or an armed attack under Article 51 because the cyber realm is not really specifically explained. So the United States holds that Article 2 is not implicated in the cyber domain, absent with some physical manifestation in in the cyber world with a significant destructive effect. So pretty much you can compare it to the Russian cyber attacks on the elected systems back in the voting poll days here not too long ago, and it didn't cause any physical harm and no sustaining scale effects, so it didn't trigger the article. Um, and many other countries see it differently, but that's where it's at. The impact. Availability, confidentiality, and integrity are how CompuSec individuals and CompSec individuals see how it's affected. So affected organizations lose access, availability. Um, Files were encrypted, so they lost access to those files. Confidentiality, the malware, and does install a backdoor that can be used to leak data from those machines. So we lose our files, not just availability, but the confidentiality. The integrity, aside from encrypting that data, the malware doesn't alter the data. So luckily the integrity is still intact, but the backdoor could be used to cause additional damages to those files. So how to mitigate these? So as we said earlier, it was updating, updating, updating. But due to the legacy systems and people not updating and Microsoft being a little late to the get-go on a few things, um, it wasn't updated. So you need to continuously keep your systems updated. Maintain backups that account for that data. Always keep your information backed up. Secure information needs to be encrypted and backed up. Uh, Ensure that everything you use is always updated. Uh, Always confirm that devices you're not using or companies aren't using are always updated, but if they're not being accessed, and make sure that they're not being accessed from individuals that shouldn't be accessed with monitoring them and control. So should we know when these kind of events happen? To date, upwards of 300 million USD have been extorted from victims of ransomware. Uh, Upwards of 2,000 and soon to be more, if not more, have been reported by individuals who have experienced ransomware through companies um, that were affected. Um, a total of 10 plus million dollars has been reported of losses from companies. So I believe personally that yes, we should be informed of when this kind of thing happens, why it's happened, and why the company should be held liable. We need to understand when the businesses aren't prepared, if our information is secured, and can they even handle our information? So on the right, there's 4 steps for businesses to follow, but personally, you should follow them yourself to understand if those businesses that you are doing business with, such as with your credit card information or Social Security or anything of the like, are actually following them to make sure they're secure. Um, in the end and in conclusion, Wannacry caused a lot of issues across the globe. It is what you should look at and what we as individuals and cyber professionals should look at to kind of get a glimpse of what is happening in the world, how terrorist attacks are switching from bombs to sometimes just digital that people on the outside don't really understand just yet, but very destructive and can take away everything. So I hope that you guys understand WannaCry and understand what we need to do to mitigate it from the legal perspective, the different ethics perspective, and the CI or the confidentiality, integrity, and availability side.